to welcome Kate Curler today. Kate is an attorney who specializes in what we call elder law. Kate works in the area of support for individuals in the elder arena who can stay independent and at home as long as possible. And if they do have to go into assisted living or a nursing home or a hospital, she'll help you negotiate contracts for living care and get them back home as soon as possible. Kate started this business in 2010 because she herself was a caregiver for her parents. And she saw the struggles and all that was involved and in getting things put together for parents. Welcome, Kate. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm good.
We are
Tell
glad to have you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
What do? I fight for the grandmas is what I do. And
Not the
sometimes
grandpas?
grandpas, although, they're both vulnerable. So what I do is I know what it's like to be a caregiver daughter. And I know what it's like that, you can't solve all the problems of my clients. And I'm sure you guys understand this as well, simply by drafting a piece of paper or going to a judge. So I get them to some resources. I help them come up with a plan. I make sure that they're protecting themselves financially. They're getting access to all the benefit programs that they would need. And just kind of taking that, what I call an holistic approach and looking at the big picture and not just, how can I sign up the client and have them fill out some pieces of paper for me? So I try to really use my personal experience to try to make things better, or at least as best as it can be when somebody gets older and starts having what I call the challenges of aging or disability.
Do you work with long-term health care insurance too? Because I know some people have that and some people don't. Is there a process involved with paperwork with long-term health care too?
I mean, there is. It's I don't see it often enough, I have to tell you. A lot of people we're aging in this country. I mean, the fastest growing demographic is people over the age of 90. So a lot of people are out spending their money, I know. And they're out living their money, and out spending their money as they live. So long-term care insurance, I don't see it very often, but I will tell you when I do, it's a very valuable tool. I've used it. One point, a gentleman was able to keep his wife home for a period of time. In another case, it provided up to $500,000 worth of care for a woman so that her family didn't have to put her house on the table to pay for her care. And the third situation was somebody who had long-term care insurance, and then when they needed to make that decision to move to a nursing home, unfortunately, old people can be a commodity when you're shopping for a nursing home. So the more income, if you have long-term care insurance, the more assets you have will make you more valuable to a better place. So I use it in those three circumstances, helping people have a plan to go home, the best plan for a nursing home, the best plan to pay for that nursing home. But also if people are denied coverage, I get them some real great resources to file an appeal.
Yeah, with my parents, my dad still lived in the home and they owned it jointly. So is there any advice you can give for people who need to put one parent into the nursing home, but they own, like when they're looking at their assets, one of the spouses is still in the home. So in my situation, we didn't lose the house. I don't think they could take that, but it was a very confusing time for us too, trying to figure that all out.
No, it is. And it's very scary too. A lot of people believe that if they have to put their loved one in a nursing home, they're going to lose everything. And some of the saddest phone calls that I have are with caregiver, usually it's a wife in the three circumstances I've had, where somebody calls me up and they've been struggling with having their loved one at home, and especially if he's physically larger than her when it comes to actually moving him or taking care of him, but they believe in good faith that they'll lose everything if he goes to a nursing home. And actually with Medicaid, in making the person who needs to go to a nursing home eligible, what we call the community spouse, or I call it the spouse in the house. The spouse in the house can keep a car, a house, about $100,000 in assets, an income of about $2,800 a month. So people need to know that. I mean, sometimes it's a really hard decision, and not placing somebody in a nursing home every time is it the worst thing in the world. I mean, sometimes it's the best thing for a family in that the spouse is not then going to put themselves into a hospital or pass away themselves, and then we have a vulnerable senior out in the community.
are you saying that if they have joint assets that exceed more than 100,000, in your scenario, the wife would have had to have disclosed that and give it to the nursing home?
Well, there's ways around that. There's Medicaid planning. So there's certain planning techniques that attorneys have put together when you are facing nursing home care and the spouse in the house has more than $100,000. But if that person has less, you can transfer assets to them to get them up to that. And then if they have, say they have 500,000, and then you talk about what to do with the additional 400,000. There's planning things you can do. There's purchases that you can make. Sometimes you just pay privately for a while. Many times that's the best way to get your loved one into a really good place, is to pay privately for a while. And you also do things like you purchase a prepaid burial or some of the other things that, grandpa might need at that time, like a new hearing aid, new dentures. You make sure you spend
that's a lot of money to spend. I mean,
it's a lot of money on
dentures.
dentures. I know. But there are ways to conserve that. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I don't have a lot of people that are going into nursing homes that have $500,000.
Right.
Really, people are aging. Yeah, people are aging that kind of money.
Right.
Yeah.
And if they have it, they just got to self-pay, right? Are they still a commodity if they're self-paying?
Yes, and they're a very wealthy commodity. I mean, and that's the thing too. It's like I don't, in some ways, I don't have an objection to some of my clients paying privately for getting good care. That's what grandma's money's for. So not all of my plans involve preserving it so that the kids can walk away with some sort of a windfall. I mean, spend it on grandpa and make sure he gets the best care. That's why he worked his whole life. So that's when some attorneys don't see that holistic approach and they do like traditional Medicaid planning. And then I'm looking at a nursing home contract. I'm looking at a nursing home contract for a poor little old lady. And that's not what I call, it's not sexy to a nursing home. I'm going to have a hard time getting her placed. So it should be thought of in a broader picture when you're doing Medicaid planning on how to make it right for grandma as well. Yeah.
Yeah, well, at the tune of like $10,000 a month, which is like where we're at.
Yeah.
I mean,
we go through
my
money
God,
fast.
who really could put away enough money for that? I mean.
Yeah. Well,
you use the money you have until it's gone, and then you go to Medicaid when you don't have any money.
Yeah.
And one of the exciting things about Illinois is one of the, I don't know how many states, but I know Florida doesn't, let's put it that way, from my own grandma. But in Illinois, assisted living is paid for under Medicaid. So it doesn't mean, in Florida, it's not. So in Florida, your choice is either stay at home, either have enough money for assisted living, or go into a nursing home, sometimes prematurely. In Illinois, we're able to keep more people out of a nursing home because the government will pick that up. So I think that's really.
Do you ever work with people that are divorcing? I mean, I know people get divorced when they're all ages, and we've seen, I think, more recently what we're calling gray divorce. People in their 70s and 80s are filing and getting divorced. Do you ever work with people in that situation, because there's a lot of planning to do?
Mm-hmm. I definitely do. And definitely if you guys have a case, and vice versa, if I have a case where there's somebody, sometimes with dementia, there's this stress on the spouse in the house. There's also just people's personalities change, or unfortunately, the worst part of somebody's personality becomes 10 times worse. So I used to work in the divorce field, so I don't, and I can have some really uncomfortable conversations with people.
Did you escape?
I do bring that up. Yes, I did. Yeah. I don't know if I'm winning or not, but either way, it's very complicated situations with very private information.
I had a case. I had a case within the last couple of years where they were in their 70s, and the spouse, I represented the wife, and the spouse filed for divorce, but he had dementia, and his kids were kind of behind it. That was a really tough situation. Yeah.
And sometimes I do see some stepwives that a lot of that the second spouse, sometimes that's really tricky. Sometimes it's, the kids ganging up and wanting to make sure that they get their inheritance, or sometimes it's the second wife that all of a sudden gets really nervous about what's going to happen to her money if he, has to go to a nursing home. So these situations are tricky.
You have a case like that now, Jessica, don't you? Somebody does in the firm.
I don't know if
I
it's
did.
mine.
I did have one, but Yeah, I did have the case that I was talking about, but he ended up dismissing his petition because he was going to have a guardian. There was all kinds of things that were going to have to be put in place because he wasn't even able to talk about a settlement position or testify at trial because he had Alzheimer's.
Yeah, GAL or guardian would need to be appointed then for that person.
Yeah.
If they didn't have the wherewithal to make their own decisions, but which may or not contradict with what the kids, want.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and when you're doing divorces, I mean, do you keep? I mean, I remember when I did it way back when, like 10 years ago, and it was kind of, usually one person would want the house, and then one person was more vested in having retirement. But as people get older, I mean, that might be something that should be spread out a little bit. Does it change your strategy when you're dealing with clients that are older or nearing retirement age?
A little bit. I mean, here's the thing. When people retire, generally speaking, if all of their money is marital and they've, accrued it during the marriage, they really should be on equal footing at retirement. So, typically a case where maybe somebody had a very long-term marriage that if they were still working might be a disproportionate allocation of property. When they're retired, it's kind of like you argue for 50% because everybody's the same. And, the Social Security stuff we never deal with because it's federal and we're under state law and they can work that out however they work it out. But what I've seen lately in some of these older cases or where there's older people getting divorced is attorneys try to go for maintenance. I'm like, from what? All they have is stuff to divide and they're both retired. So I've seen that come up a bit as a problem, trying to get over that hurdle. But generally,
is that a way that they try to equalize because I mean, the more money you make, the more Social Security. Do they try to equalize the Social Security distribution with maintenance? Is that the idea? So that each receive one half?
I've seen some attorneys make arguments like that, but the issue is that you can draw off your spouse's Social Security in certain situations anyway. And the court doesn't really have control over how much you get. So, I feel like those are few and far between cases where there's allocation of Social Security because the federal law governs it anyway. But I don't know. What about Jan and Kim? Have you guys had anything like that? Maintenance with elder divorce?
Yeah, I've never seen, once one of them retires, I don't think I've ever seen somebody with the maintenance because it's based on the income. We're just dividing the assets at that point. So there would be no need for maintenance once.
Well, unless they had a disproportionate, like they had a retirement, like I think Jessica was referring to. Maybe they have premarital retirement and they have Social Security and the other spouse doesn't get Social Security. Maybe she was a teacher and there is no Social Security payment. So maybe they're trying to equalize it like that, but the
distribution is different than giving a maintenance though. Like because they've got that large non-marital, if they're going to get, maybe 60% of the estate instead of 40, or instead of 50, that happens, but I don't see maintenance. You see maintenance?
Yeah, a lot of times disproportionate is the answer instead of maintenance. Yeah, I agree. Especially in gray divorces.
What about long-term care insurance? Is that something you ever see as an asset since it's going to create a stream of income in the future?
Rarely.
Okay. People just really don't have it. It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of your everyday Joes, they take like whatever insurance is offered to them through their employer. And even like life insurance term policies, they won't get a bigger policy until they get divorced and they're forced to. So I don't know if it's just because they're, the stage of the game that we normally see people or what, but I don't think I've ever had anybody who's had that.
It's so darn expensive. I
was just going to say that, like if you're disabled, the disability insurance is crazy money. What about long-term care insurance? Is that more reasonable or no?
No, it can be very expensive. And if you think about it, if you have marital income and then, say that one spouse, those premiums can be like, let's say $1,200 or $1,300 a month. And so I would wonder, say if you have, and if you get the policy at 50 and you pay into it for 10 years out of marital funds, and then you're the only spouse that's ever going to benefit for it, it might be something to think about when you're, settling cases. Think about how much marital money went into that one asset that then is taken off the table completely.
I've already decided what my long-term care plan is. Does anyone know what my long-term care plan is?
Well, you know what? Most of the time people would both have it. Would they
You're
just
looking
pick
at
it for one person?
I'm sorry, what, Janice?
Would they just pick long-term for one person? Or
Well,
wouldn't
that's
they
the thing.
both generally have it?
No, you have it as an individual. It's like disability coverage because it's based on how you know, what age you get it.
I know, but if a couple's going to get long-term health care insurance, do they just roll a dice, say, do you going to get it for you or me, or would they both have it? You know what I mean?
That's a good question. Yeah. I guess, and it also depends on whether or not somebody, I mean, you got to get it before you get a diagnosis. I mean,
right.
That's the thing that I run into in these situations is people, you know, people are assuming maybe dad's older or mom, you know, people have these assumptions in their head about who's going to get sick first and who's going to die first. Or their assumption is I'm just going to die and I'm never going to need this. And some of those guesses are really can cause some crisis. I call it crisis management. People ask me if I do a lot of planning, and I don't. I do a lot of crisis management because people didn't plan for mom to get sick. They planned for dad to get sick, you know? So sometimes long-term care insurance doesn't really help, and it can be a burden at that point.
I love that. I think that's what we do at our firm. It's not planning so much as crisis management. You're exactly right.
Yeah. Oh, Janice, that's true.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you know what you could do is you could buy yourself a long-term care policy, and if you have it, you probably won't use it. Isn't that like the law of the odds? And then so
that's true.
You're protected.
There's so many places. If you can pay $1,300 or $1,400 a month, there's so many places where you could invest that money to try and make it work for you instead of just limiting it to an insurance policy. Sorry, I hate to say it, but like, especially if you have two people that are going to need that care, you're basically paying over $10,000 a year for the policy. And it's, I mean, I don't know. I just
But the problem is let's say you've saved and saved and saved, and then one of you needs to go into the nursing home. Then you've got this crap load of money. And then what do you do?
That's what it's for.
Right.
It's for care. And you know what? I think a lot of people are self-insured that way. You have to be.
Right. Well,
Is there some way that you could ever put that in a prenup? Because one of the things that I see is, you know, there's the older gentleman who gets the younger wife, which seems like a really good idea for her at the time because she gets the Viking River cruise and all that. You know, now she gets to travel, maybe she retires early. And then I get the phone call from her when she's 67 and she's like, my 82-year-old husband now wears diapers and I'm not ready for this and I still want to travel and do things. And I've seen a couple of cases like this where sometimes they're even actively, this is horrible when I'm saying this, but they're actually like going out looking for their next husband. So that might be something to think about. If you have a large disparity in a marriage, that's something that the young woman with the older guy who's dying to spend all the money doesn't think about. And then all of a sudden has to figure out, she's making decisions about a nursing home in her early 70s, you know, and she's going to be left with nothing. Because you got to remember, if he goes to the nursing home, and for the very wealthy, that's different. But for the average middle class, if she's 72 years old, her husband goes to a nursing home, all she's got left is $100,000 for the rest of her life.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
That's
like,
a problem.
You don't, it's for both of you, but
you can only do so much planning around that.
Out.
Like you married him, so either you will need to. There's something called a Medicaid divorce that you might want to consider, but in some of those cases. But that's something that I see. I mean, these women are like, I'm not ready to be, you know, going to sit in a nursing home all day long.
So the Medicaid divorces get divorced so that you don't have to spend all the money.
Yeah. And sometimes that's really hard. I mean, sometimes people do it in these situations where it's not nice, but there's other times. I mean, I've been in courtrooms where it's really sad. You'll see like an 85-year-old man walk in with his two kids. Well, this is before COVID, having to divorce his wife because for Medicaid purposes, and the kid, you know, it's really emotional. That's really hard to do. But there's also the option you have of not cooperating with the state in disclosure of assets, but they don't make that easy for you. It's very stressful.
Sure.
So
when you divorce your wife for purposes of Medicaid, you get a divorce and you award everything to yourself, so she has nothing, and Medicaid's okay with that?
Well, it would be, well, if it's out of their name, yeah. I mean, there's specialized firms that do Medicaid divorces. I figured it'd be something that I would be doing because I was transitioning from divorce into Medicaid. And I've actually never done one, but I know that there's firms that do. One of my concerns is, my understanding is in the state of Illinois that the division has to be equitable.
I was gonna say, and I don't know, how do you argue that in good faith on the record?
And I don't know how do you argue that in good faith on the record? Because there's other times, I mean, I've been in courtrooms where it's really sad. You'll see like an 85-year-old man walk in with his two kids. Well, this is before COVID, Yeah. So
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of obstacles with it. But I've actually been in a courtroom and watched it happen. So, and I'm not sure how that,
But having
know,
50% of your estate is better than having, a tenth
That's
of your
true.
estate. So
that's true. Yeah.
Right. So yeah. So then at least only half of it goes to the nursing home before you're eligible instead of all of it. I get that.
Yeah.
But I've never
Yeah.
done a Medicaid divorce. I've never even gotten a call about a Medicaid divorce in all my years of practice. That's new to me.
I mean, I think it's something we're going to go from, we're going to have 30 million seniors in this country in 10 years. So it's something that we are going to see because the baby boomers are not aging well. And, they're also with, some of the loss of like the 401ks and the houses and stuff, the housing market, they've taken some really hits throughout the years. So I think that it's something, the states are going to have, and they're going to make it harder for for the spouse in the house not to cooperate. You have to understand, like some of these states are really going to be squeezed by this aging crisis. It's something that experts call the age wave or the silver tsunami that is literally going to go through every aspect of our society. But in particular, it's going to put a lot of stress on Medicaid and that long-term care. I also believe that people are going to start shopping in different states. So I've already had a couple cases like this. You have to remember, if you bring your grandma to the state of Illinois, the day she gets here, she can be considered a resident. And you can put her on Medicaid and you can have the taxpayers pay for her assisted living. So I have clients who they want to move their mom to Arizona because Arizona has cheaper memory care than Arizona. So unfortunately, what we're going to find, I think, is that the states that actually have a plan and provide good benefits for their seniors are going to become very popular places for people to move. I've seen people make decisions on who mom is going to go live with based on what state has the best benefit program. So
Medicare is for everybody.
10 years.
Medicare is for everybody. Medicaid is for indigent.
Yes.
People, okay. And isn't it a federal program? And you're saying state to state. How does different states regulate a federal program?
The same way with Obamacare. So it's a federal program when it comes to funding, but individual states can decide what they're willing to use the Medicaid money for. And that's how the Obamacare, the Medicaid waivers, and different states doing different things with Medicaid. So yeah, they can make different decisions about how they spend their Medicaid money. And there's also VA benefits, which is a federal program, which can be helpful for some seniors as well. So that's cash in hand, tax-free if you're a veteran.
Yeah, if there's not a residency requirement, then you just go wherever you can go to get the best.
Yeah, I think
guess
people,
the state
honestly,
pay the
people are
most.
going to start shopping. Do what? Sorry.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, my plan, in case you wanted to know,
What is
I'm going to
I'm going to write this down because I'm
going to Mexico because I have a house down there. And
nice.
I figured for the money, my caregiver can be a live-in person and can wheel me oceanside during the day with the margarita.
Nice.
And that's kind of how I'm going to spend my,
Yeah.
My faculties do not have to be with me. They just have to wheel me to oceanside and give me a cocktail. And I think it's just going to be grand.
We'll call it margarita dementia. That's what we'll call it. Just sit there and I
wonder if I could sell my plan to others. What an idea.
Long-term care insurance. Yes, you'd have a whole bunch of, it'd be like the Golden Girls in Mexico. You're like 7 if you live in there. And I think we are going to see baby boomers do that. Like they've talked about moving into, it's going to be interesting because I know a lot of people that are like, we're just going to move in, a bunch of us, and pool our money. And the thing is, I'm telling you right now, the nursing home lobby nursing homes are $1 billion business. They have a very strong lobby. I have a feeling that we're going to see some crackdowns on that. They're not going to allow people that think they're just going to live together and hire a nurse and 3 caregivers.
Why wouldn't they be able to?
Yeah, I don't think other people realize they're not going to have that flexibility. And the nursing homes are really going to figure that out.
Why wouldn't they be able to do that?
Licensing. The medical licensing of somebody being able to do that. Nursing homes are going to come after that because you have to be under the Nursing Home Act or the Assisted Living Community, Senior Community Act. So
not in Mexico.
Not in Mexico though.
Even with private, even with individual funds, You'd
I mean,
still
I
have
just
to-
think that it's something that, it's going to be, they're going to find problems with that. Cause I think a lot of people, that's why people are moving into like senior living, independent living, assisted living.
because there's a
Because if
lot
you were
of
the caregiver, though, if you think about it, Jessica, if you were the caregiver, you'd want some kind of insurance in case you accidentally, like, I don't know, lost somebody or
Yeah,
hurt somebody,
drop somebody. That happens.
drop somebody. And then who's going to insure you, unless you're like licensed or, so that's probably how they'll get you.
Yeah. But I know they do it with like adult children who have disabilities. Like
Then those are
there's
group homes,
parents
so they're
that live in a group
highly
home.
regulated.
Is
And
it?
again, that's something else where people shop. I have a case, I do disabled kids as well. And I had a case where the guy was here living in a horrible place full of bed bugs and God knows what else.
Yikes.
Some very unpleasant stories. Anyway, his family moved him out to Colorado because they were like, there was a brother that lived closer and they had better programs out there. So Illinois in that respect is one of the states that does a horrible job taking care of their adult disabled. So, yeah.
Is it because of money or just facilities, or why does Illinois do such a bad job?
Priorities probably too. Yeah, it's just not funded the way it should be. I don't know. We're one of the last states when it comes to adult disabled. So
What about guardianship? How does guardianship play into like the divorce scenario if someone's getting a divorced? Is there ever a need for guardianship for children or adults?
Well, normally, I mean, if you can't contract, if you're too disabled to contract, then you shouldn't really be getting married. When I'm talking about like a disabled adult, somebody who's like, let's say 35 or 40. I don't know how they get around that with certain disabled people. I've never had a case like that. But as people get older, if you can't handle your affairs, you need a guardian to handle one of two things. Number one, talking to the doctor, but number two, handling your financial affairs, in particular lawsuits. So if something happens to grandpa and he needs a guardian to handle his money, to be able to make decisions for him, and he doesn't have powers of attorney, then he's going to need a guardianship. Say he does have powers of attorney. The thing about a power of attorney is it involves the cooperation of both parties, and he can revoke it at any time as long as he has capacity. But as long as he stops cooperating, it's revoked. So say that grandpa named his second wife as the power of attorney, and then they get into a fight, or he goes to live with, I've had this happen, the one person that literally goes and lives with their kids, and then they do new powers of attorney, and now we have to go to court to fight over who should be in charge of grandpa. So sometimes guardianship is just real straightforward. Somebody needs a guardian, let's go to court. Sometimes guardianship is an alternative to powers of attorney that shouldn't have been signed, or that people they can't work together anymore. They can't cooperate for whatever reason. So there's a lot of family, like with you, like your cases, there's a lot of family dynamics, and sometimes people that aren't directly involved in the actual marriage all of a sudden become involved in the marriage and try to make decisions for the person. So I see that.
So then there's contested issues about who's going to be the guardian, right? That's a contested situation.
Yeah. And sometimes those go to trial. I mean, sometimes the issue is, does the person need a guardian? So you bring a doctor in to testify. But there's also, I mean, I have a case right now where brother and sister are fighting. Sometimes what parents do, they're well-meaning, but they'll put one kid in charge of money and one kid in charge of health insurance. I mean, the health decisions, and then understanding the kid in charge of the health decisions is the kid who makes the decision for placement. So then usually it's the daughter. I got the daughter saying that this person should be in a nursing home, shouldn't be home, or needs extra care. And then I got a brother with some control issues who is like, I'm not paying for that, or we can't pay for that, or we're not doing that. And so those cases end up in courtrooms as well. When parents try to do it fair and assume that their kids are somehow magically going to get along, that causes a lot of conflict.
So pick a kid and stick to it is your advice.
I know, right? Yeah. Yes, please.
No, we also
don't, because that's how I have a law firm. So
we also have cases where there's kids involved, and not only do we have parents fighting over, allocation, but then you have a third party saying, wait, I want to be the guardian, or I need to be the guardian.
Yeah.
And that's outside of domestic relations court. So that's another tricky issue. And I know Jessica's working on a case like that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and think about it. If you had a case where, I don't know how, if a prenup would ever come into this, but if you have a case where the people are really clear about what they want to do, and that they've always, for whatever reason, maybe they've talked about it, or they thought that that's what was going to happen, and then one of them has, God forbid, a car accident or a stroke or dementia, you know, then you have a situation where the guardian needs to be looking out for the best interest of their person, and then all of a sudden those deals are gone. You know, it's another reason maybe to have a postnup. You know, if you have a breakup and you make a bunch of promises that everything's going to be okay, it doesn't mean that your kid who's a guardian has to adhere to that. And it doesn't mean that the guardianship court that is just looking out for your spouse has to adhere to whatever you guys agreed to. So I think a postnup would be very important, especially a postnup or prenup for, you know, second marriages or long-term marriages, if they want to kind of renegotiate the contract later. It's very important. Otherwise, it's up to the guardianship court, and they don't give a crap. They don't care about the last 40 years of your life. You know, they're going to do what's best for you. So.
Right. It's interesting. It's a lot for, I mean, people that are going through a divorce should be thinking about all of this stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of their plan and what they're going to do. And if they move on to a new relationship, like, it's a lot.
Well, I've done we've all done a lot of prenuptial agreements, but I've never, ever put in when my husband starts wearing diaper cloths.
Mm-hmm.
The spouse in the
you
house,
need it.
the cat in the
You
hat.
can make yourself cutting edge in the field of aging, because I'm telling you, these things that, you know, the things that are now don't have to be. I mean, you're one, you know, brain bleed away from some situations.
And a lot of times in prenups, we don't even talk about powers of attorney.
Mm-hmm.
Now that you mention it.
Yeah. Well, it's the estate planning of it, you know, so
right.
Yeah.
Assume most people will go in and get their estate planned, and that's part of that, you know, so.
They should.
I never talk about it.
But if they come in for divorce, that might be something to ask. Do you have powers? I mean, most people, their power of attorney names their spouse. And
Right.
so they need to have somebody in line after that, which is, you know, is this the kid you still want to do it? Or do you not have anybody in line? Maybe that's a good time to redo those forms, even at the beginning of the divorce. Because like I said, God forbid you have a car accident in the middle of it, you know, and it's going to be a lot longer and a lot more expensive. And that person is going to be tied. This is the thing you got to remember. Medicaid doesn't give a crap about you guys didn't get along and you were going to get a divorce and you met with an attorney. You're still a spouse in the house. So I have a case, a woman called me like a month or so ago, and she said essentially they've been separated for years, you know, and it's fine, you know, it's no big deal. He doesn't have any money, and but he lives in Florida, and if he were to get in a car accident or he were to get a diagnosis or have a stroke, she's on the hook. So she spent the last 10 years building up savings, and if it's over 100,000, I mean, Medicaid doesn't care that you don't get along and you don't really want to take care of this person anymore. Your money is on the table to pay for your spouse. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Good to know.
For better or worse.
Yeah. There's some vows there. Richer, sicker, incontinent, dementia, mean dementia, like the dementia where you're up all night screaming, and yeah. So these are they're hard cases, and they're hard for people to, you know, what they envisioned in their marriage, you know, 20 years, you don't think somebody's going to age this way. I mean, sometimes dementia is really a horrible disease when it comes to the person's ability to, their anger and what they say. You know, your house can become very small when there's two of you living and you're living with dementia. So it's very hard on caregivers.
Is there a cure coming? What's the deal with this dementia, Kate? How much do you know about the scientific research?
Not a scientist.
She's like, dang, really?
I know I have doctors that do what we call doctor's reports. So yeah, but no, I mean, that's the thing too. I think a lot of people think of dementia as, you know, grandma just sits in the chair and she doesn't always know what day it is, and it's kind of cute, you know, not cute, but you know what I mean? It's not that you're like, oh, they make sure she gets to bed on time or something, but some dementia is very troubling. It involves personality changes. It involves saying things that you normally wouldn't say. One of the parts of the brain is a woman named Teepa Snow, and she has these amazing, check her out on YouTube, these amazing trainings. And one of the things that comes with dementia is this breakdown of, thinking before you speak. And,
I have that.
Yeah, see, I think it's the margarita dementia. It's called margarita dementia too.
No comment.
But yeah, sometimes it's not nice. Like I love my grandma was the biggest sweetie in the whole world. And she always was. But she, a couple times in the end of her life, she went to the nurse's station one time and she was naked. She's deceased, so I can say this, but she would actually laugh at this. She was naked and she was very mad. She was in a bit of a huff because she was supposed to go to a beauty pageant and nobody had shown up to put her in her gown or do her hair and makeup. And she was beside herself. And it took them like a half hour to calm her down. So sometimes it can be funny like that, but sometimes dementia really can be, she was upset. She was accusing them of stealing her stuff and her money, and it takes a lot of patience sometimes. And when you're living at home, my grandpa couldn't have handled that. That would have been, they were in assisted living, but they were home. She was hallucinating like dragons and everything else. It can be a very horrible disease and scary for the other spouse.
Yeah, my mom started hitting my dad. Mm-hmm. And so he'd be like at the stove cooking and she would like bop him on the head. And I thought,
great.
The first time I heard it, I said, well, kind of, did you deserve it? No. But, it was like, he was scared. He was, and he's stronger than her, but when you're sleeping, someone can get you. Or your back's turned. So we didn't have any plan for her either, but she had to go in because the violence could not be something he could tolerate, clearly.
Yeah, sometimes it's just too much. People, and that's a breaking point in some phone calls that I have with people. They really start to cry and like, this isn't fair. You don't have to do this. And sometimes they want to prove it to their kids. They want to prove it to themselves. They can. God forbid the stepkids hate them and think that they just married dad for the money. But it's just not. 1/3 of the time, the caregiver spouse ends up in the hospital or dies based on the stress of being a caregiver, and nobody plans for that. So it's not really fair when some people are, when they're asked to, they're trying and they're struggling to do care for somebody that they love, that they're aging themselves and having their own, and they neglect their own,
they neglect their own health care and die. Yeah. That's exactly what happens. Yeah.
Well, that's what happened with me. My mom was sick, and then my dad, out of nowhere, had an aneurysm in his aorta and ended up on life support. And I was like, God. I didn't plan for that. I got the whole sick mom thing. She might not live, a normal span of a life, but that's exactly, it was the stress. He'd been having these pains. He wasn't watching his blood pressure. He was trying to do everything. He was Superman, but he wasn't. So it can be really hard. Yeah.
I feel sad now. We need a happy subject to end this.
No.
Let's end it. Let's end it on a happy Halloween subject. So what are you doing for Halloween?
Oh.
In COVID-19 Halloween, what do you do?
Probably this, just dressing like a lawyer. Maybe I'll pretend I'm something else. Like I'm a first lady. I'll be a first lady on Zoom. I don't know. What am I going to do?
I saw it on Facebook and I totally want one. It's like either this long pipe that you like shoot the, like from the second floor, you shoot the candy down to the guy at the
I love
mailbox, or the big gun that's filled with candy and you shoot it at kids.
That's smart.
Wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah, until you hit some kid and then their parents want to fight you in the front yard.
I don't think anybody's sending their kids out to ask for candy at the neighbor's house. It's just not going to happen.
I bet you they are.
No.
You know what I think people should do? I think they should put little not because it's going to be one, but it's going to be one idiot kid who's 17 is going to take them all. But take
that's why if you're there,
candy and put them all in your front yard, and then the kids can go get them themselves.
Yeah. I really like the pipe idea, though. You'd be up on the second floor. As the kid comes, you just send it down the chute.
Yeah.
Jan.
I don't see anybody during this pandemic sending kids out asking for candy from the neighbors. I don't see
$10, there'll be a million kids out.
People are dumb.
They canceled trick-or-treating in my town.
Really?
Yeah, but we never get trick-or-treaters anyway. We never get any.
$10.
No, I think there's kids that are still going to go, or they're going to take them, go to a parking lot, or I don't know,
Yeah.
I mean, you
And
can't have a
bar
Halloween
and-
party. You can't bob for apples. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Where's this-
Well, I didn't
this
care
is-
about any of that as a child anyway. But boy, if you took away my ability to go from house to house for 4 or 5 hours to get my
Yeah.
candy, that would have been pretty devastating for me.
What if
Well-
it was replaced with like a giant piñata filled with candy and you just like fill your
Yeah.
bag as fast as you can on your lawn?
Right.
It's true. Kids don't know. It's like, oh, look, this is new. This is
Or
what we,
just
this is
turn
what
it
we do
into-
now. They learn, kids are malleable. They learn we should put, now we wear masks. It's like, okay, and they just do it. They don't
Turn it
complain and
into
whine like
Easter.
adults.
Fill little eggs with candy and hide them all over your property, and they could be orange and black. Done.
Yeah.
Well, it's done when you've got little children, but when you get bigger children, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
I know it. I know it. But
Well, I can't wait to see what happens. I'll show you a picture of my gun when I get it.
We'll hear about you on the news, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm sure you
Make
will.
sure
This
you-
lady with a gun. Yeah.
make sure you have appropriate legal signage on your property.
Yeah. That it's not a real gun. It's a candy gun. So,
Beware.
Well, it's like this big
Enter
around and you can
illness.
see the candy in it. So
okay.
they,
Well, thank you, Kate, for joining us.
problem.
And
It's been really fun.
everybody stay safe and be well. And we'll see you next time on our next Talk Tuesday.